Hi, everyone. Welcome to the third week of our Summer Rewind series. And this week, I've selected Miriam Susan's episode on crossing boundaries. This was a very tough story to hear, or compilation of stories to hear, because we don't like to think of the people we love as also being the people who hurt us. And so it was very difficult to hear. But as I point out in my reflection at the end, there was laughter. We had a good time sharing and recounting some of the resolutions and the discoveries and the learnings that took place. And so I think my two favorite parts, and one is going to sound self-serving, but one of them is that Miriam said that she loved my podcast. And she loved the fact that it was a place where we can share our stories and be open and honest and raw with each other, and just be a place where someone can feel seen and heard and loved. And yes, that made me feel really good about what we're doing here at the Warrior Words podcast. But not just for my own selfish reasons, but for the woman or women or men that these stories, these words can help, can truly impact and possibly change the trajectory of someone's life. The other thing I loved about this episode was now I didn't call them warrior words in the episode, but her words of wisdom at the end. She had some fighting words, and they're not necessarily what you think. Or maybe they would be because of who my audience tends to be. But I encourage you to listen to the end to hear what Miriam Susan has to say about it. So let's rock into episode 3 of the Summer Rewind series. Are you walking through a storm that feels like it will never end? Do you wonder if life's storms have stolen the beauty from your life for good? You're in the right place. My name is Heather, and like you, I've been through a storm or two and wondered if life would ever be beautiful again. Here we share warriors' words, stories of discovering beauty after battles, and the worth in your wounds. Pick up your sword or boxing gloves and join the battle. Your words are powerful, my friends. Make them warrior words. Welcome, warriors. Miriam Susan, mother of 6 and Catholic convert, has spent nearly 3 decades navigating the physical and emotional trauma caused by toxic in-laws. Drawing from her ongoing healing journey, she hosts the Catholic Wives Desiring Peace podcast, where faith serves as the foundation for establishing healthy boundaries. Through personal experiences and insights, she creates a space where Catholic women with challenging in-laws feel validated and understood. Miriam Susan empowers women to charitably protect themselves and their families from controlling in-laws while honoring their Catholic values, a path she knows from lived experience. Now, grab a tissue and join Miriam Susan and me as we talk about how controlling family members can become toxic, both emotionally and physically. Let's rock. Welcome, Miriam, to the Warrior Words podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Yes, and I'm glad that we were able to schedule and get on here together because we're actually talking about a topic that I don't think we've addressed at all here on the podcast, and that is about certain family members who maybe cross boundaries that they shouldn't. So
Yes.
I am going to open it up to you because I think we had discussed prior to hitting record that it might be a good idea to start in the very beginning when you first encountered this issue with people crossing boundaries.
Yes. So in the beginning was no, I'm kidding. Um, so my husband and I met in college, and both of us went to a school that was not our hometown. And boy meets girl, boy and girl fall in love, and then boy takes girl to meet the parents. And it was about a 6 hour drive, and we drove to see his family. And I knew just from talking with my soon to be husband that there were some issues with his mom specifically. And we get to the house, and I had my own room. And it's just such a weird memory that just popped back actually fairly recently. And I took a shower, pretty benign thing by most accounts. But I grew up in a house where we didn't ever turn on the fan, the exhaust fan in the bathroom. So like having, the steamy mirrors and all that was normal. That apparently was a no-no at their house. And what happened was I was, putting my stuff away after taking my shower, and I hear my husband's, my boyfriend then, mom yelling at him and his brother about who didn't turn the fan on. Why are the mirrors in the bathroom all foggy? Why is this like this? And I'm like, oh my goodness. Like I knew it was me, obviously,
Yeah.
but that was my first experience with like, whoa, like what just happened here? And I didn't even really process it. On the way back to home or college, I had the absolute worst migraine of my entire life. I was nauseous. I basically just like slept in the back seat the whole ride home. And it really hasn't been until like within the last 2 months that I've thought about that and I processed that. And I thought, wow, that's my very first adrenal crash of many to come,
Mhm.
which was because of just the extreme amount of stress that I was under at their house that first time we met. So we went through dating, and when his mom found out that he wanted to ask me to marry him, she was not excited. She was not all those things that you hope a future
Right.
mother-in-law would be.
Mhm.
Um, and she found out because she read his journal. Now, this is a
Oh,
20-year-old man
wow.
who was home, and she got a hold of his journals and felt like it was her right as a parent to violate his privacy and read his journal. And she made a lot of accusations of, you just want to marry her because you've slept together. Well, by God's grace, we were virgins when we got married. Um, and entwining all of that, like, well, you don't have to marry her just because you slept with her. All the anything you can think of, she tried to throw at my husband to stop us from getting married. She did. So that was like the very beginning. And then things kind of evened out once we got married. Yeah, there was a lot of drama, but you just play it off because you think, well, this is her firstborn son. She was so young when she got married. Maybe they grew up together, all of these things, and it just never stopped. The phrase "a thousand death by a thousand paper cuts" really summarizes my experience for the last almost 3 decades with what now I consider to be highly, highly toxic in-laws. Every just a lot of weird little things that just in and of themselves were not a big deal.
Right.
Like they complained about the bed in our guest room. So we had three little girls. We had a separate guest room just for my in laws to stay in when they came. because they would visit a lot more often than my parents would. And it was a day bed with a trundle. But I mean, we were not wealthy like they were. We just had a space dedicated for them. But apparently that was not good enough. And so it was like they were sleeping in a chest of drawers, or we didn't have enough hooks in the bathroom, or why didn't we just build a sunroom that was fully insulated with heating and air instead of just a screened-in porch so that they could stay there when they would come to visit? So things progress. At this point, we have 4 children. My husband was active duty military. So that was a huge blessing to be active duty military, moving all the way across the country, it was really the best thing. God knew what he was doing, moved us far away so that we could start to have our own traditions, even though we would have these visits every 3 or 4 months, we would see my husband's parents. And that was completely normal for my husband. And so he gets out of the military, and we decide to move closer to home. And we had always wanted to do that. We had always wanted to go back, live near his family, because he loves his family. He's always very, that was one of the things that really attracted me to him, was how much he loved his family. And so we ended up buying a house about an hour away, and things were okay at first. There were a lot of expectations of, well, so-and-so's having a birthday. We've never met so-and-so. Why do we have to go to the park? But that was the expectation. And what I now have words for, which I did not back then, was they were very enmeshed. And so we were just like an appendage on them. And we were expected to be at all the family gatherings. My children were expected to perform at family gatherings. My husband was expected to play the saxophone or the flute or whatever it was. There were a lot of expectations put on us that we did not ask for, we didn't want. And then we had this house, and it was an hour away. It was on a little hobby farm. And one day I remember we were just doing our thing. We homeschooled, so we were always home. And all of a sudden, one of the girls was like, "Oh, Grandma and Grandpa are here." It's like, really? They didn't call to let us know. No, they're out picking blueberries in the yard. So see, it wasn't like this bombshell thing. I mean, there were some things later on, but there weren't, it was just a lot of little things that, you could easily play off, very easily play off. It's like, well, that we're family. What's the big deal? They're coming over to pick. We're not going to eat all the blueberries anyway.
Right.
So what's the big deal if they come over and pick blueberries? And we decided to move, and we thought, well, we're just going to do this very under the radar, very incognito. Let's just put it up on Craigslist. This was when Craigslist was a thing where actually people went to. And one day my mother-in-law showed up, and as she walks in the door, now we had told nobody. We didn't have a sign in the yard, nothing. She's like, "So have you had a lot of bites on the house?" And my husband's like, "Yeah, actually we have. We've had some people who were come by and checked out the house." And we were like, "What in the world? Like, what happened? Like, how did she know? She was stalking us before I even knew that that was kind of a thing to do on Craigslist. She was watching to see what was going on."
I wouldn't even think to look for something like that.
No, because you're not this crazy person. Because you have normal thought patterns. Yeah, so we ended up moving, and that was really good. We actually ended up moving down closer to my family, and then we took a leap and we moved overseas. And I will tell you that that was the most peace that we had in our marriage, hands down, because
Kinda
we knew
hard to
there was
just
an
show
ocean.
up then.
Yeah, there's an ocean.
Yes.
There's, a passport that is required before they could just drop in. So then my father passed away, and we moved back to be close to my mom to help her with that transition. And things were okay with my in-laws for a while. But we realized that it was never enough. Like whatever we did was never enough. Like when we did live an hour from them, there was one point where my in-laws said, "Well, we just feel like we haven't seen the kids." And then my husband and I, you enter in these conversations, and these people are so good at talking and getting you to just start nodding your head and just kind of agreeing with what they say. It's almost hypnotic. And then you walk away and you're like, wait a minute, we saw them on Sunday, and then they had the kids on Tuesday, and then we saw them again on Thursday. And we counted, and in a 10-day period, we had seen them 7 out of the 10 days. And yet that wasn't enough.
Wasn't enough.
And it's like, okay, so that my husband started to pick up. Now like I said, he always knew there was something off with his mom. Always. We can speculate for days as to what caused it, but we just knew that there was something off, and I can't diagnose her. But that's when he was like, okay, starting to piece things together. This is not normal. Like, this is a lot. Like, we have seen you a lot, and it's still not enough. So at one point we had, my husband took a job overseas, and it was going to be a 90-day deployment, and it was going to be in a combat zone. It was with the Department of Defense contractor. It was a high risk job. And actually, there were some people who did not come back when he was there at this job. It was based in Afghanistan. And we had told my in-laws that he was leaving. We were still on decent and decent grounds with them at that point. And we said, well, he's leaving on, Tuesday. And they just happened, in air quotes, to find a marriage conference that they were going to go to that would lead them to cross paths with our town over that weekend right before he left. And so I was like, well, why don't you come that Thursday and Friday? We'll visit. You can see, because I'm a mom, so I know that it would be hard for me to know that my son is going off to a combat zone. So, okay, why don't they come visit, and they'll get to see the kids, and we'll do all that. And so we did. But before they came, they wanted to stay in our house. And by this point, I was already starting to piece together that my body does not react well to them coming. Even just thinking about it, making the plans, anxiety would kick in. And it just felt like butterflies, but it was like I never felt that way going to see my parents. But it was just them. And then I would just have headaches, and I felt awful after they left. Now I know that it was just a huge adrenaline surge, and then I would crash afterwards. But so we decided they could come, and they visited. And right as they were leaving, my husband, just in passing, said, hey, why don't you come by just real quick on your way home? Just stop by. Maybe one of the girls will make cookies, and we'll just visit again. And then they left to go to the conference. And I was like, honey, I don't really want to see him again. Like, this is our time. You have 6 kids. We have 6 kids at that point. I just want it to be us. Like, I don't want to see him. Like, we've already seen him. Let's let him be. So he manned up, and he made a difficult call and called his parents and said, Dad, I know we said something about coming back through on your way back home, but I really just want to spend that time with the family. And of course, the conversation was very short. There wasn't a lot of playful banter, going back and forth. And that was it. Until one day, just, 2 days later, maybe it was the next day, maybe it was Monday. My daughter was getting ready to leave to go to work. And, love you, bye, we'll see you when you get home. And then the door opens again. I was like, what happened? She's like, I just saw their van go by. I was like, what? Are you sure? She's like, yes, I'm 100% positive. Their van just drove down our road. We lived on a dead-end street. This was not, our house was like 25 minutes from the interstate. This was not a convenient stop-off point. It wasn't like they were just happenstance that they happened to be driving by.
Right.
It's like, are you sure? She's like, I'm positive. She's like, I gotta go. I gotta go to work, but I know that it was them. My husband went out to investigate. And sure enough, there they were, hanging out in the cul-de-sac. They did not come back down the street. They were hanging out in the cul-de-sac. I don't know. I guess just waiting. I don't know. I don't know why they were. Um, and my husband walked down to see him, and we would not let them come in the house. They had a gift for the children, lots of air quotes with them. Um, they had a gift that they wanted to give the kids that was some seashells from the beach, because the place they stayed at for the conference was at the beach. And some of the little, like, just like the decorations that you kind of throw away and you clean up after you have a conference,
Yeah.
that in a bag for the kids. And that was the excuse as to why they were down our street. And my husband got thrown things in his face like, is this the kind of legacy you want to leave for your kids? And, basically, like, this is all your fault. And I was like, okay, that was real. Like, I couldn't believe it. I was in such a state of disbelief that these people would hear the word no, and it didn't matter. Like, this was their own son. Like, they didn't care. He goes on the trip, comes back, and we had just entered the Catholic Church. We're converts. We entered in the Easter season of 2018. And 2019, we decided we were going to have our youngest baptized. He's the only one in our family that was baptized Catholic. And it was right on his birthday. So this date is extremely memorable. Well, the day before his birthday, he got baptized. And my brother-in-law, my husband's brother, is a Catholic priest, also a convert, and he did the baptism. And so, of course, Grandma and Grandpa, my in-laws, are invited, which, I probably would have invited him anyway, but didn't want to. And that weekend was the breaking point. My mother-in-law she was on fire. She was on something. She was so intense that weekend. We were intense too, anticipating. So so I have to say that. It's like, I know that she was intense, but at the same time, we were being hyper vigilant. No alone time with the kids, which we had tried before, but this time it was like definitely no alone time with the kids. When my daughter went upstairs to her room, my mother-in-law followed, and then I followed. Our girls went outside for a walk just to get out of the tension. My mother-in-law followed, and I told my husband, I was like, she just went down the street. And he said when he got out, that he had to get on his bike because she was booking it. She doesn't run, but she was going so fast. And my girls remember like looking over their shoulder and seeing her and seeing like her hair like blowing. Like that's how fast she was moving. So things were super intense. And it was just like that the whole weekend. The whole weekend. Thankfully, the baptism went off without a hitch because I've heard lots of stories about people like this who like to show up and, take the center stage for occasions like this. And then it was time for my brother-in-law to leave. He had a flight to catch. And my husband just kind of said, all right, kind of like ushering everybody out of the house. Like, it's great to have you here. Love you. Well, call me, when you get home. And of course, that was not well received because they were not planning to leave right away. And after that visit, I crashed. Like after the mass and after lunch, I just remember sitting in a chair in our living room and just feeling like I was dying. And I was basically bedridden for 3 days because of an adrenal crash. And at that point, my husband realized, okay, this is not all in your head. This is not about you needing to pray about how you see my parents, which I had been told a lot of times. It was a obvious physical response that my body had. So he emailed or texted his parents and said, basically, don't call us, we'll call you. Now, what happened after that, we could have never, ever, ever imagined. not, I mean, it's still hard for me to believe. Um, that was 2019, so 6 years out. So we said, please don't contact us. We'll contact you when we're ready. And then things ratcheted up to just craziness. Um, totally ignored, totally disregarded anything. Um, Started sending gifts in the mail. My husband returned it. He wrote return to sender on one. So then she changed tactics and she started sending postcards because postcards don't have a return address. Um, then she realized that she could use DoorDash and send Krispy Kreme donuts to the kids because you can't return them. And you can't call Krispy Kreme and say, somebody has sent me donuts and I don't want them, which I know sounds absolutely crazy because I'm a sugar addict. But anyway,
I'm with you. I have not had a Krispy Kreme in a long time.
but now I never want one because it
Right?
was like
Yeah.
it was this tool. It was like
Mhm.
if I give them to the kids, she wins because they're going to ask. They weren't little. At this point, my oldest was 21. So they're almost, well, 21, 19, and then like a 3 year, I don't know. I can't do the math on the spot like that. There's like 2 years and then 3 years, but they're all kind of, and then my youngest was our bonus surprise gift from God. And he was much younger. But so you get these donuts, and what are you supposed to do? The kids are going to ask where they came from. And if I tell them, because I'm not going to lie to my kids, then it's like, oh, well, she wins because she's the good grandma and she sent the kids donuts, even though they knew that we told them not to contact. So there's so much more that happened. Then we decided to move. Again, like our first move, we decided to try to play under the radar, but at the same time, it's like we had to list it. This was a bigger house. It was one that we needed to get. Obviously, anytime you sell a house, you want to get as much as you can. Our other property was a very unique one, but this one was not. And so we listed it, and we didn't tell anybody at all in my husband's family. No one knew. My mom knew, and my sister knew because they lived in the same town. Our neighbors knew because the sign was up, but we never told anybody except my mom and sister where we were moving, not even our neighbors, not our parish. We never unregistered from our parish. I mean, we have now, but at that point we had not unregistered. We didn't tell anybody. And then the postcards started coming. Oh, we see that you're moving. We moved to love you to come visit. And then the week that we were moving, I was selling our dining room table, and like the guys had just left. Like two guys came and they picked up the table, they picked up all the chairs, they had just kind of pulled away, and the doorbell rings. And I was like, okay, that's kind of weird. At this point, we had installed a security camera because we knew that there was a likelihood that they would come back. And you can probably guess where this story is going because
I wonder.
they're so predictable, and yet it's not. But um, it was them. It was them. And I immediately went into um, flight mode. Some people go into fight mode. Some people go into freeze mode. I go into flight mode. And I mean, our house had like the front door was like all glass, like top to bottom. And so they're like looking in. And I've got all this on the security camera. And I had all the kids go upstairs so they could not be seen. My heart still races thinking about this because it was just so intense. And my mother-in-law's like talking to the security camera, like, we just have a little gift. Again, a gift. Um, and like, we just want to say hi. We just want to, all this stuff, like looking up at the security camera. And then they left. And then they came back. And then they left. And then they came back again the next day. And I called the police at that point, the non-emergency police number. And, they told us what we could do. And then I think maybe they did come back down the street again, but they didn't come to the door. And then we find out from neighbors that they were asking around all the neighbors, like, whose car was that? Whose white car was that in the driveway? And I was like, okay, that's my oldest daughter's car. She didn't live at home. And they showed up on a Sunday, and my daughter had not come by the house since Thursday. But she was telling all the neighbors how concerned they were about us. But they were there Thursday. So Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So 4 days for you to be in town, 11 hours from where you live, because you're so concerned and you don't show up till Sunday. And then you're talking to the neighbors. And then the next day, we have a recording of them. My mother-in-law is talking to a neighbor across the street while my father-in-law is on the phone talking to our parish, asking where we're moving, what's going on. My mother-in-law is looking in our car. So we left and we moved to another state. And when we moved, we did everything we possibly could to hide our new location. We had records suppressed. We talked with private investigators about scrubbing all our data from the internet. We did everything. I mean, hours and hours and hours and hours of work. And we had relative peace. I mean, we moved during COVID. That was not a good time to move to like make new connections, but we did. It worked out the way it did. And like I said, we had relative peace. Always kind of like knowing this, it's going to happen. At some point, they're going to find us. I know. And one day, my husband was sitting on the front porch, and he travels a lot for work. So praise God that he was here that day, was up and out on our front porch, which he didn't normally do. And he saw a truck drive by. And again, we live on a dead-end street, so not a through place. He sees a car go by really slowly. And so immediately the spidey sense is going.
Right, yeah.
And then
this has happened before.
Yes. And then he sees it coming back again. And so this time he takes a picture. And he comes inside. And they had sent my husband texts at this point, but he had them blocked, so he didn't know that they were there. And he shows me the picture, and I was like, that's your dad's truck. 8 hours away. 8 hours away, they drove. And he's like, we need to call the church. We need to call them, like, immediately, because that's where they're going. Call the church, let them know. They already knew a little bit. I mean, we had given pictures to the youth ministers, like, these are people that are not allowed by our kids, not allowed to have contact with our kids. And like within 5 minutes, we get a text back from the children's minister. Like, yeah, we have some concerned, air quotes, grandparents here. Can you send a picture? Send a picture. He's like, yep, that's them. So they talked with father and the office manager for about 45 minutes, trying to tell them that my husband, a married man who had been married at that point for 25, 26, however many years, I don't know, about 26 years,
yeah,
that he was the prodigal son over and over again. And thankfully they were like, I don't think this applies to this situation. You've got a married man who is active in the church. His family's active in the church. You said you didn't give them an inheritance, so they didn't get what they wanted. They wanted to trash talk us, which I guess they kind of did, but they weren't buying father wasn't buying it. And the office manager was like, no, we can't share information. But it was at that point that my husband was like, okay, we have to take legal action. We have no choice. And for some reason, I can only say that it was God who prompted me to do this. I saved almost everything. I saved the DoorDash receipts. I took pictures. I saved all the cards and postcards. I saved stuff that my in-laws had sent to my sister and my mother, who my mother also had an address that was not in her name. So they had to do some digging to find that. And I forgot. My mother-in-law God revealed our address to her on a sleepless night at 2 o'clock in the morning, because that's how God works, right? Gives you a GPS point on Google Maps to tell you where your estranged son and his family live.
Wow.
Um, but making that call to a lawyer was really, really hard for
Yeah.
my husband, because these are his parents.
They're still his
Loves
parents.
he loves his parents.
Right.
I I love them as human beings because they were created in God's image. I'll just leave it as that. It's hard. It's hard to love and respect somebody who treats you and your family and their own son in this kind of way. Um, but we made the call, and we had a stack of evidence that was about an inch and a half thick, just of papers of postcards that they left in our yard for our kids to find with their phone numbers on them, hidden around the yard. And we moved forward. We talked with the attorney, like, what are our options? Like, this is getting really, really creepy. I mean, it had been creepy, but finally it was like my husband realized that this has gotten to a point where, I've told you what I want. I've told you what I need to see happen. I told you what I need from you, but you're totally disregarding it. So the lawyer's like, well, basically, your only option is to seek a protective order. And we were like, okay, well, what does that mean? It's like they just can't contact you. It's like, okay. And that's all we knew. And so we're like, well, I mean, for the sake of our children, all of our children, well, that we have 4 girls and 2 boys. Our oldest does not live with us. Our 3 older girls were almost all, 2 were adults at that point. And they're like, Daddy, we want you to do this. And I don't know that he would have done it without them saying, we need you to do this. We need you to protect us. And so we did. And the lawyer was very clear. He's an expert on evidence. And he's like, when we send for the paperwork, you might get an ex parte protective order, which means that you can get a protective order without a hearing. And he said, but usually those are cases of domestic violence where, where bodily harm is imminent and likely. And so we thought, okay, well, we'll do that. But by some miracle, we got it. We got it. And so at that point, it was just amazing. Like, we couldn't believe it, that we were actually doing something to make them stop. And so that's that's my abridged version of not like big T trauma, but a whole lot of little T's
But when
over a
you,
long time.
yeah, but when you do, they compound.
Yes.
If you have one paper cut on one of your fingers, okay, you can live with that.
Yeah.
But then that same finger gets 5 more, and it impacts how you bend at the knuckles. It
Yep.
starts to impact your entire body,
Yep.
which you had that physical reaction. It
Yes.
started to impact your physical
Yes.
body.
From the beginning.
Yeah. And so while it's not, because you mentioned, with the ex parte, that, there wasn't a big chance of you getting it because it's
Right.
usually referred to, reserved for, physical imminent harm. And what I think our part of what our judicial system needs to realize is that you are having physical
Yeah.
danger. That was physical danger to your body. Nobody's punching you and nobody's cutting you with a knife, but their actions and their words
Yes.
are having that same impact.
Yes. Yeah.
And I realize that, in our system, that's not a very provable
Right.
cause effect
Yes.
um, thing, but it's I mean, I noticed that in my own journey with the court system, that a lot of they just, if you can't prove it,
Right.
it's much more difficult to get them to pay attention. But I'm so
Yes.
glad that you were divinely inspired to keep all of the evidence that you kept.
And we
I
still have
mean,
it.
yeah.
And we still have it.
Oh, well, I think as long as the potential threat still exists,
Yeah.
then you need to
Yeah.
keep it, and because you never know what might happen, or what judge, or what lawyer, or
Yes.
who might be there the next time. If
Yeah.
hopefully there is no next time.
Hopefully.
But wow. I don't know if impressed is the right word, but that's what's coming to mind right now with how your husband navigated. At least, I realize you didn't give us the whole thing. You gave us the abridged version, but he was basically walking a tightrope the whole time because he loves his parents. I'm sure
Yes.
he loved his siblings, or loves his siblings, not in the
Yeah.
past tense. Um, and he loves his wife, and he loves his children. And right now, or throughout this whole ordeal, it's almost like, it's not at odds, but it kind of was. You
Yes.
weren't doing anything necessarily to them unless it was from their perspective, and
Right.
you know you
I did
didn't
all
let
kinds
them.
of things, I'm sure.
You didn't let them see their grandchildren 9 out of 10 days. It was
Right.
only
Yeah.
7.
Right. I
you
know.
know
Sorry. No, I'm not sorry. I'm not sorry.
So, but that is such a hard, that's such a hard road to walk when you are, I mean, the Bible tells us, to leave and cleave, and
Yes.
that he is now joined to you and your children, and that's where his responsibility lies
Right.
after the marriage, after the wedding. And he had to reconcile that, and he had to do take the action, because then the other thing the Bible tells us is honor your father and mother.
Yes. We've had to dive very deep into that. And the way that we've been able to process that is remembering, okay, who wrote that commandment? It wasn't mom and dad. God wrote the commandment. And so what does that mean to honor your father and mother? Well, he can honor his father and mother by being a good husband, by being a good provider, by being a good dad, by being a good Christian. All these things really do bring honor to his parents and how they raised him. But it does not mean that he has to obey them. So that was a huge revelation for him, is realizing that he can, because he wants to be a man of faith. He wants to be a man that at the end of his life, God says, "Well done, good and faithful servant." And so that's always in his mind. And so for him to realize that the way his parents used honor your father and mother, and they actually sent us a book on how to honor your parents. I know, it's like, you can't make this.
Just the word that keeps popping up, like, I think with every story that you share, the word that keeps popping up is manipulation,
Yes,
manipulation,
just a little,
manipulation.
just a little.
Yes, yes.
Oh, but yeah, so it's like it's always been very important and always in the forefront of his mind to this day. Am I doing the right thing? Am I doing what God is calling me to do? And it's been reaffirmed by priest after priest and therapists and counselors and religious brothers and friends. There's like, yes, you did. And he's lost his whole family. We are all that he has left. And he has a very large extended family.
It's
But he said he would do it all over again because of what his vocation is. He's a husband and a father, and that's it.
Yes. Well, I just had another guest recently who shared about her relationship with her husband, and ended up talking about some of the beauties in marriage. And you just affirmed that as well. And I love, even when we have these traumatic experiences, I love hearing the stories about how, especially this is coming from a divorced woman, but hearing the value that is placed on marriage, and hearing the um, the fact that you guys have a good marriage now, despite all of this,
Right.
and to hear good marriages, strong husbands, it's refreshing, because it's totally anti-cultural from what we're seeing on social media, and what we're
Yeah.
seeing in movies, and streaming and other shows. It's hard to say TV now.
Yeah, it is.
Our generation, it was TV, right?
Yes.
And now it's just shows somewhere
Yes.
streaming. But yeah, but what the media is showing us is that, that husbands are weak and marriage isn't valued, and not here, not here.
Yeah.
Your husband, as hard as it was, he stood up for you, and he stood up for your children, and for
Right. Praise
himself,
God.
and for himself too.
Yes. Yes.
So,
That's hard for him to think about, though. That's really hard for him because he was raised to never think of himself, to always cater to whatever mom wanted. If mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. And that was extremely true for him growing up. Um, but yeah, this whole process has shown us just how much God loves us, which I know sounds really weird, especially to an unbeliever, to think, okay, God loves you. Like, does that actually work? But my husband now claims the Blessed Mother as his mother. I mean, and that's huge. And we know that we have saints that are actively ready and willing to pray for us and intercede for us. And I mean, that just gives me chills because as a Protestant, we didn't have that. And now I realize, like, wow, like if we had not gone through all this, our faith would not be where it is right now. Our children's faith, now we have 4 adult daughters. Our oldest is not exactly where we would like her to be, but we still have a good relationship with her. It's taught us to be better parents, but it's taught our girls about faith and red flags to look for, what kind of things. Not that they're not affected, because they 100% are. They are absolutely affected by having a childhood that was always tense around their grandparents. My youngest daughter says she never remembers a time being around her grandparents that wasn't tense. Never. And she's 19. So, but yeah, there's, beauty from ashes. There are things that we never would have learned had we not gone through this.
Oh, goodness. So, okay, so we had all of this tumultuous couple of decades, 3 decades almost worth. And you've got your protective order. How are you and your husband, how are you thriving now? Like, what are you doing to make some beauty come from this situation?
It's been very hard fought, very hard fought for me, for my physical healing, just realizing the role of hormones and like prolonged chronic stress and how that affects you. So I'm very much still in the healing process from that. I mean, you can't go from being, in your early 20s to being 50 and having basically chronic stress all that time and it not take a long time to heal, which stinks, but it is what it is. At least I feel like I know there's a path, there's a light at the end of the
Right.
tunnel, yeah, that I am on. My husband has come from, thinking about his parents first thing in the morning and thinking about them the last thing before he goes to bed, to not doing that. I mean, and that's huge. It's huge because I felt like the relationship with my in-laws really stole a lot of his attention from us. And now we're getting that back. Praise God. Probably most easily tangible thing is that it has opened the door for me to do things like this and share my story with other women. And just yesterday, I was sharing our story, a much more abridged version, with some ladies at a tea party, and another lady in that group said, "Yeah, my mom is a lot like that." And I think, I don't like to give the enemy, the devil, a lot of credit, but I do know that he loves silence. When we have these situations, he likes to have us try to feel the burden of shame and guilt as much as possible to keep us from a relationship with God. But when we start to talk about these things, that's why I love your podcast, because it gives people an avenue to share the hard things that have happened in a way that is very freeing. And just sharing your story does that. It lifts that burden so other people can help carry it. And so just connecting with other women who have said, gosh, your podcast really helped me. Gosh, what you told me really was helpful. Thank you. I mean, that's been a very unexpected um, part of this that has just been amazing to help me not only help deal with all the things that, I'm still having things that come up and it's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened, but have like a purpose behind it, have a purpose behind all of this pain. And that has been very, very healing, is to know that I can take this awfulness, this tumultuousness, like you said, and turn it into something that can help others and help them have a voice. I mean, thank you. Thank you that there's not maybe not thank you that it's happened, but thank you that now I have an opportunity to use it so it's not just a heavy burden that I carry.
Absolutely. And you mentioned your podcast, so share a little bit about your podcast, because I did mention it in your bio part. So
Right.
tell us about it.
So my podcast is called Catholic Wives Desiring Peace, and it's not just for wives. I actually have a husband who listens to it, which is kind of neat. A husband of a friend of ours, and her mom was the toxic one. And I share insights. I feel like every week, every time I need to hit record, God just gives me something to download and to share. We're going up on like episode 65, 66 this week, which is kind of crazy, and just me
Yeah.
talking. So I'm looking forward to having more people on to share some other voices. But that comes out every week, and I have a little newsletter that just goes along with it. And then, if it's okay, I would love to give your listeners a free gift. If you go
Please.
to desiringpeace.com/journal, it's called the Desiring Peace Journal, and it's just a self-prompted PDF where you can just journal and just kind of process some of the things that you're going through. Think about, what are you seeing? What would you like things to be like? And just really just kind of getting all this out of your head and onto paper. Because up here, it is not good. Up here, it just, kind of keeps going. And you just think about it over and over again. And it doesn't give you anything to do. And so I'd love for your listeners, if they're interested, to grab a copy of that absolutely free, to help them process and think about, if they have situations like this. And it doesn't have to be in-laws. We were talking beforehand, these relationships can come in many shapes and sizes, and in-laws
Yes.
just happen to be what I dealt with. But, parents, grandparents, siblings, it's all this toxic stuff. It weighs on us. And I feel like it's important for us to share, even if it's just pencil and paper, and get it out.
Yeah. Oh, brain dumps in general are so
Yes.
helpful. But I think when we journal um, these traumatic experiences in our head, like you said, it kind of just jumbles around and it's just in there. When you put it on paper or digital, you type it out, and then you go back with fresh eyes,
Hmm.
you can maybe see patterns. And
Yes.
you can see, oh, when she does this, I do that. Or, there's something in there that you may not have realized when you're writing down. But it's
Yes.
that time and that fresh eyes, you come back and it's like, oh, I, I see now.
Yes. Yes.
And
Those
yeah,
patterns.
yeah, it just helps your brain to process it. So yes, please go grab a journal, whether you're doing it for toxic in-laws or other people in your lives. But yes, please take advantage of that. And thank you for that. Very
Happy to
much
do it.
appreciated. And so the last thing that I like to ask everybody is, so you mentioned how my podcast allows people to share their stories, but I think it also allows people who are listeners to listen without shame or guilt that you had mentioned before as well. Because all they have to do is put something, hit play,
Yes.
download and hit play. They don't have to tell anybody that they're
Right.
listening. They don't have to necessarily, share with a priest or a pastor or a therapist yet.
Yes.
They can listen and process and feel heard and feel seen because someone is experiencing what they have experienced. So with that in mind, what would you say to a woman? Because most of my listeners are women. I haven't had any men come forward yet.
I bet there's one out there. Be brave.
Other than my few male guests. But what would you say to that woman who's listening who has a toxic relative in their life and they just don't know where to go or what to do?
I understand. I know what it's like to feel hopeless and stuck and just scared for the future. Scared for the future. I was very scared for the future, thinking that one day I would have to be like a primary caretaker for my in-laws. But what I would say to her is never give up fighting. Never, ever give up fighting. And I don't mean fighting like with your fists or fighting with anger, but fight with prayer, fight with patience, fight with your faith, and then any legal options that are available to you. But never, never, ever give up. Never lose hope. Maybe, I don't know, like I said, I never imagined I would be in the situation that we are in right now. I never thought I would, maybe be rid of them is not the right word, but I never imagined that we would have gone so long without having to see them and having to do the dance and pretend and walk on eggshells. And I never, ever, ever imagined it. But yet here I am. And definitely what was the undercurrent that I never gave up praying for my husband. I never gave up praying for the situation and really just crying out in desperation to God, like, please help me find a way through this. And he did. He came through in very miraculous ways. So just never, ever give up fighting.
To that. And with that, I will thank you. Thank you for your time and your bravery. I know it's a difficult and challenging situation, and I appreciate that you are willing to share your story so that someone else may not have to experience what you did. So thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Like I said, if one person can listen to this and have the courage to stand up and say, you know what, honey, things need to change and protect their children, then that's all I can ask. That's all I can ask. So thank you for giving me this opportunity. I really have enjoyed chatting with you.
Well, thank you very much. Before I start the reflection part of this episode, I want to point out that neither of us has anything against Krispy Kreme donuts. In fact, I was so sad when they closed in my area a few years back. But hey, sponsorships are open if anybody's interested. Okay, so I was glad that Miriam could laugh about that story and other parts of her story, because laughter is so healing. And I know it can seem impossible as you're sitting here listening to this episode. Maybe you're thinking, there's no way. There's no way you could laugh about your story or even parts of it. But I tell you that it really and truly is healing. And so please just know that with God and with time, all things are possible. So maybe you can find just a little bit, just a little nugget of your story that you can laugh about now, and then let it grow. Let it grow so that you can laugh and heal. But I know how impossible it seems. And, even Miriam's husband had an impossible or seemingly impossible tightrope that he had to walk during a majority of their marriage. He loves his parents. He loves his wife. He loves his children. On one hand, the Bible says he's now one flesh with his wife. So Miriam now holds the primary place in his life. On the other hand, the Bible also says to honor your father and mother. So with the words and behaviors and inappropriate actions that took place in Miriam's story, he had a decision to make that was not easy. But what I heard from Miriam was that they tried. They tried to honor his parents as best they could. They tried to have a relationship with them. They tried to forge or facilitate a relationship between them and their grandchildren. But with no punches thrown and no other harmful actual physical contact, the relationship was still damaging. Is still dangerous. It was detrimental to their physical and emotional health. They tried everything they could until it reached the breaking point. And he had to make the difficult decision to cut contact so that they could all start to heal. I say in the pre-recorded intro that I have, I say there that your words are powerful. And Miriam's story illustrates that in two different ways. First, there was the negative power in her in-laws' words, the power that they had on her and her whole family. The passive-aggressive comments, emails, postcards, they had an effect long after those words could no longer be heard. But Miriam also shows us the power of using your words to name what's happening, to find and use your voice to speak up and speak out, to use your words to say, I'm not going to allow you to hurt me anymore. To share her story so someone listening can feel seen. If that's you, if you are walking through a storm where someone in your life is using their words to hurt or manipulate you, borrow Miriam's words, her voice, and find someone to talk to who can help you. Maybe that person is your spouse, maybe a parent, a friend, your priest or pastor. Find someone who can not only see you, but hear you. Use your words to take your power back from someone using words to hurt you. Find your voice and recognize that you still have value. And if someone comes to you with their words, listen. Listen. And listen. Then hug and help as you are able. So there's your something to think about this week. Until we meet again, armor up, fight the good fight, seek beauty, and make your words warrior words. God bless.